Have you ever felt that heavy voice inside you, whispering that maybe it's time to give up? Why, just when you're putting in the most effort, does everything seem harder? Why does success feel so far away when you need it most? And there's something even more unsettling. What if you're much closer to achieving it than you imagine, but you decide to stop now? Stay with me for a few minutes, because what you're about to hear can change your decision forever. Maybe right now you're sitting in silence, staring into space, feeling that weight in your chest whispering that maybe it's time to quit. Maybe you were chasing a dream, building a project, starting a business, or trying to change your life step by step. But things got complicated. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and the results you expected simply didn't arrive. And then the doubt appeared. That little seed that starts as an innocent thought and ends up growing until it occupies everything. You start to wonder if you're really good enough, if all this effort makes sense, if you're not just wasting your time, if maybe the others were right when they doubted, if right now you feel like giving up. I want you to know something very important. You are not alone. Almost everyone who has tried to build something meaningful has gone through exactly this same point. That moment when exhaustion mixes with uncertainty and hope starts to weaken. But here is something that few understand. That feeling isn't necessarily a sign of failure. It doesn't always mean you're wrong. Sometimes it means something very different. You could be inches away from what you've been seeking for so long. You could be right at the crossroads where many turn around, and a few decide to continue. What you're feeling now isn't strange. It's human. And understanding it is the first step toward not making the mistake of quitting too soon, because there's a truth that almost no one tells you about these dark moments. And that truth begins with a very simple idea. There's an old saying that claims the darkest hour is just before dawn. It's that moment when the night seems endless, when the cold seeps deeper and no light can be seen on the horizon. Everything seems still, motionless, as if the dawn were never going to arrive. The exact same thing happens in life. Just before a major breakthrough, things usually feel harder than ever. It's almost as if life itself is asking you how much you truly want what you're fighting for. As if it's testing your determination at the exact point where it's easiest to turn back. Think of any great story you know. Every hero had a moment when they wanted to quit. Every person who achieved something extraordinary went through a stage where continuing seemed absurd. Not because they lacked talent, but because the path grew dark. At that point, the mind begins to build arguments for giving up. It tells you that maybe it wasn't for you, that maybe you've misinterpreted the signs, that perhaps it would be more sensible to turn around and look for something easier. But what you're experiencing may not be a sign that you're failing. It may be a sign that you're close, very close. Before any major transformation, there is friction. Before any significant achievement, resistance appears. And that resistance isn't always an enemy. Sometimes it's simply the final barrier before crossing to the next level. The question isn't whether this moment is uncomfortable. It is. The question is what you will do when everything inside you wants to stop. Because if we look at history closely, we'll see that many were in that same place, and some decided not to give up. Think about people we consider symbols of success today, not because they were different from the start, but because they went through moments where giving up seemed like the most logical option. J.K. Rowling was rejected by multiple publishers before Harry Potter became a global phenomenon. Imagine how many times she heard that her story had no future. How many rejection letters she had to read before someone believed in her manuscript. Michael Jordan didn't make his high school varsity basketball team. For many, that would have been enough to accept they just weren't good enough. However, that disappointment wasn't the end of his story. Walt Disney was fired from a newspaper because he was told he lacked creativity. Today, his name is associated with one of the largest creative empires in the world. Now stop for a second and think. What would have happened if they had given up just a little sooner? If Rowling had accepted that her rejections were a definitive sign? If Jordan had decided he didn't have talent? If Disney had believed that criticism? And now think about yourself. You might be at that exact same crossroads. At that moment where it seems easier to give up than to continue. But history proves something very clear. The most painful moment isn't always the end. Often, it's the threshold. Here's something important that almost no one explains. From the outside, success seems sudden. One day, no one knows you, and the next, everyone is talking about you. But that perception is misleading. Progress happens in silence. Preparation happens in silence. The accumulation of experience, of resistance, of learning happens away from the spotlight. When the visible result finally arrives, the world calls it overnight success. But you will know it wasn't like that. And there is the true test: believing before seeing, persisting before external proof exists. Because most people stop just when the invisible process is about to bear fruit. And that leads us to something even deeper. There's something fascinating about growth. It's almost always invisible before it becomes evident. The skills you're developing, the resistance you're building, the lessons you're learning don't appear immediately before your eyes. They accumulate in silence, like water slowly filling a vessel. For a long time, it seems like nothing changes. You work, you try, you correct, you fail, you try again. And yet, externally, everything looks the same. That's the hardest part to endure, because the mind wants immediate proof. It wants visible signs confirming that the effort is worth it. Imagine a miner digging for gold. Day after day, he strikes the rock with his pickaxe. Dust rises, muscles tense, exhaustion increases. He finds nothing. A month passes, then another. Finally exhausted and frustrated, he decides to quit. What he doesn't know is that if he had given just 3 more strikes, he would have reached the gold vein. How tragic it would be if your dreams were 3 attempts away and you decided to stop just before. How ironic it would be to give up when the tipping point was so close. Most people quit because they interpret the lack of immediate results as an absence of progress. But progress doesn't always manifest in applause or visible numbers. Sometimes it manifests in who you are becoming as you move forward. The outside world sees results. You must learn to see processes. When the accumulated effort finally breaks the surface, it will seem sudden. But it won't be. It will be the inevitable consequence of everything you did when no one was watching. And here another important truth appears. What you're feeling now, that pressure, that wear and tear, that exhaustion, isn't always a sign that something is wrong. Sometimes it's simply the price of growth, because growing hurts. And understanding that can completely change how you interpret this moment. When you train at the gym, your muscles don't grow while you're comfortable. They grow when you push them, when they burn, when you feel like you can't lift one more rep. That pain isn't a sign of permanent destruction. It's a necessary phase to rebuild yourself stronger. The same thing happens with your dreams. The stress you're feeling, the pressure, the doubt, even the fear, are part of the strengthening process. They aren't proof that you're failing. They are signs that you're being stretched beyond your current version. And every time you resist a little more, your capacity increases. Think of a butterfly emerging from its cocoon. The process seems cruel. It struggles. It wriggles. It seems like it won't make it. But that struggle isn't an accident. It's essential. If someone tried to help it by opening the cocoon ahead of time, the butterfly wouldn't develop the strength needed to fly. It would die without ever having spread its wings. Your struggle serves the same function. The natural impulse when something hurts is to stop. The brain seeks to protect you from discomfort. It whispers for you to back off, to avoid the risk, to take refuge in the familiar, and that's normal. You're not weak for feeling it. You're human. But here's the difference between those who move forward and those who stay in the same place. Those who move forward understand that discomfort isn't a permanent threat, but a temporary stage of growth. They don't immediately flee from the pain, they interpret it. It's not about seeking unnecessary suffering, it's about not confusing difficulty with failure. The tension you experience may be the sign that you're evolving. It may be the evidence that you're building the strength you'll need when the results finally arrive. And yet, even understanding all this, the road can seem massive. That's where another essential principle comes in. We often give up not because the dream is impossible, but because we look at the entire mountain and feel overwhelmed. We observe the remaining distance and forget the stretch we've already covered. The summit seems unreachable, and that perception paralyzes us. But no one climbs a mountain in a single leap. You move step by step, one firm foothold, then another, then another. When you focus solely on the next move, The challenge stops being monstrous and becomes manageable. You don't need to solve everything today. You only need to take the next small step. A house isn't built all at once. One brick is laid, then another and another. For a long time, it doesn't look like much. But one day you look back and discover you've built a solid structure. Success works the same way. It's not a giant leap. It's the sum of small actions that seem insignificant at the time. Every email sent, every workout completed, every attempt that no one celebrated, it all counts. It all adds up. And there's something important you must understand here. It's okay to be tired. It's okay to feel discouraged. It's okay to need a break. You aren't a machine. You don't have to pretend to have constant strength. You can breathe. You can stop for a moment. You can cry if you need to. But there is a fundamental difference between resting and giving up. Resting means recovering energy to continue the journey. Giving up means abandoning the destination. If you need to stop, do so. But don't confuse exhaustion with inability. Don't allow a temporary emotion to destroy a permanent goal. And in the midst of that exhaustion, remember why you started. Close your eyes for a moment and go back to the first day, to that initial spark, to that powerful reason that pushed you to take the first step. Maybe you wanted to change your life. Maybe you wanted to prove something to yourself. Maybe you wanted to offer a better future to someone you love. That reason is still there. The version of you that decided to start still lives inside you, and it's waiting for you not to give up on it now. And when you remember that, something else becomes evident. You are stronger than you think. When you're in the middle of the struggle, it's easy to forget everything you've already overcome. The mind focuses on the current obstacle and minimizes the past. But stop for a moment and think honestly. You've been through disappointments, losses, failures, moments of deep doubt. And yet here you are. You have a 100% survival rate up to this moment. That's no coincidence. That's resilience. That's accumulated strength. That's proof that even when you thought you couldn't take any more, you found a way to keep going. The fear you feel now is no bigger than what you faced before. The doubt invading you is no more powerful than your ability to resist. You are more prepared than you think, even if you don't see it clearly. But there is something no one can do for you. The final decision is always personal. You can walk away. Many people do. You can say it was enough, that you tried, and that now you prefer something simpler. No one will stop you, or you can stay. You can fight one more round, try one more time, strike one more blow, like the miner who was 3 attempts away from the gold. You can choose to move forward even with fear. You can decide that this uncomfortable moment won't be the end of your story. The difference between those who achieve their dreams and those who stay in doubt isn't talent. It's not luck. It's the painful and powerful decision to continue when it would be easier to stop. If right now you feel like giving up, remember this. The difficulty you face today is shaping the strength you will need tomorrow. What seems like an insurmountable wall might be hiding your next big breakthrough. You are not alone in this battle. Every person you admire today was once exactly where you are now. Tired, scared, full of doubt, but still standing. Keep standing. Keep fighting. Keep moving forward. Your breaking point may be just one more attempt away. And when that moment arrives, you will look back and know that everything changed because you decided not to give up when it mattered most. Don't stop now.